Start recording. There we go. All right. And welcome to all. So, what is National Board Certification? And sorry, my thing just got blocked by the recording. Let's see. There we go. Okay. What is National Board Certification? So National Board Certification is managed by a nonprofit organization. It's not a government organization. It's a private organization of teachers and of educational professionals called the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. They started in the 1980s with the idea of developing a program that was a high-level certification, professional certification to develop teachers and retain and honor accomplished teachers. It is the highest professional certification that a teacher can obtain, and it's respected nationwide. And North Carolina, of course, gives a really nice bonus for National Board Certified Teachers. Some other states do as well. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So National Board for Professional Teaching Standards identified these 5 areas where accomplished teachers are proficient. Accomplished teachers are committed to teachers and to students and their learning. They know the students and the subjects they teach. They are responsible for managing and monitoring student learning. They think systematically about their craft, and they are members of learning communities. So those are the 5 core propositions, and the National Board process is designed to give you the opportunity to demonstrate your accomplished practice in these 5 areas, in these 5 core areas. The National Board also developed this architecture of accomplished teaching, which is kind of this helix graphic, which you'll see in a lot of their literature. And the idea is that teaching well is a recursive process where you start with your knowledge of students and your knowledge of your subject area, and you identify student needs. You develop an instruction to meet those needs that are unique to those kids. You consistently evaluate student progress through the unit and adjust your teaching. And at the end, you assess and set new goals for your students. So it's customized to the students you're teaching, and it's based on good pedagogy and good knowledge of your students. So that's that double helix that you're looking to show in all of your portfolios. And that's available, that graphic is available on the National Board website. But that's sort of the goal that your portfolio is designed to demonstrate. So why do National Board Certification? In North Carolina, the pay is a really good reason. It's a 12% pay raise, but it also helps you to deepen your own practice and really evaluate yourself as a professional. It's a widely recognized professional credential, and a lot of teachers develop more confidence in their own teaching practice as they go through the National Board process. I heard it actually kind of compared to the Marines. You don't become a Marine. You aren't a Marine at the beginning of recruitment. You become a Marine as you go through the process. And National Board is a little bit like that. You become a National Board certified teacher as you go through the process. So at the beginning of the process, you wouldn't be on this call unless you cared about your students and you're a good teacher. The process causes you to go really deep into your practice and to develop your skills to the level of professionalism that National Board requires. There are some qualifications. Right now, National Board certification is only available to French and Spanish teachers in secondary school. Your youngest students must be 11 to 18 years old. If you are an elementary teacher, sometimes you can still do it with your 5th grade classes, but you have to have a class that's at least 50% 11 years old. So middle and high school French and Spanish teachers are the target audience. I'm lobbying to change that and make it broader, but if you don't fall into that band, you don't qualify right now. You also have to demonstrate that you speak and write at an advanced low level or higher. And you do that through the actual proficiency tests. You have to take 2 tests. I'll talk about those in a little bit. But you do have to achieve that advanced low level to achieve National Board certification. You need to have your bachelor's degree and a teaching license and have taught for at least 3 years at the time when you certify. So you can start the National Board process if you're less than 3 years in the classroom, but you can't finish it and become National Board certified until you've completed 3 years in the classroom. So that's kind of like an overview of what kind of the nuts and bolts of National Board, but I want to spend the majority of my time today talking about the National Board process and also answering any questions that you might have if you as we go through. So there are 4 components to the National Board, your National Board portfolio. The first step, which isn't really one of your portfolio components, but you do have to pass the oral proficiency test and the written proficiency test from ACTFL. Those tests are given at a testing center. You have to register for them, and there's a fee. And then you go to the testing center. You can do them on the same day, or you can do them on 2 different days, and you take and pass those tests. And then I think it takes a couple of weeks to get your results. And you can continue on with the process, or even like you can start the process and do this proficiency testing later. But you can't achieve National Board certification until you achieve advanced low on those 2 tests. So my recommendation to candidates is to go ahead and do those 2 tests first, because if you aren't able to achieve that advanced low proficiency, there's no point in going on with the rest of your portfolio. Also, those 2 tests it's a one and done, it's a one-day thing. They're less expensive than the other components of National Board. And so my advice to candidates is go ahead and do those 2 proficiency tests and get them, kind of get that box checked. And then there are 4 portfolio components that you submit to National Board. Component 1 is a test. It's a content knowledge test. You take it also in a testing center. So you pay a fee and you go to you schedule a test. And usually the schedule is between, it's at the end of the school year into June. The testing window is I want to say early May through mid-June, something like that. So you'll get your testing date, you go in, it's 45 multiple choice test questions and 3 essay questions. It's all about your teaching practice and very specific to world language pedagogy. I'll talk about that a little more, and I have more resources about what's on the test. But that test is 40% of your National Board portfolio. So it's a big chunk. It's a pretty significant piece of it. A lot of candidates do this component first, although you don't have to. The second component is called differentiation in instruction. So the second, third, and fourth components are all written essays that you write with supporting documentation. You write between 12 and 20 pages for the prompts that they give you on the 3 different components. So the second one is differentiation in instruction. This one is worth 15% of your total score. And for component 2, you're going to give 1 unit of instruction. You're going to highlight 1 unit of instruction in one of your classes. And during that unit, you're going to choose 2 students that have different learning needs. And in your portfolio, you show how you guided both of those students down different pathways based on their 2 different needs toward the same goal and toward the same assessment at the end. So it's focused on differentiation, and there is a big assessment component in component 2 as well, because they want to see that you're assessing those students appropriately through the unit at the beginning and at the end, and giving them guidance based on your assessment results, both formal and informal assessment results. So that's differentiation in instruction. That's component 2. Component 3 is called teaching practice and learning environment. This is the one where you take videos of your classes. And so along with your written portfolio entry, you videotape 2 different lessons. You want to find 2 10-minute video clips. So I recommend candidates videotape a lot and pick the 2 clips that highlight the best what National Board is looking for. And then you write an analysis of those 2 videos and what your planning was, and then what your decision making was during the lesson. They want 2 different lesson formats. So it's nice if you're a teacher that has different levels. It's nice if you do a novice and an upper level class if you can. But even if you only have 1 level of students, you want to show 2 different lesson formats. So maybe a direct teaching and a small group lesson, or a lesson where kids are moving around the classroom, or a lesson where kids are interacting in some way. So that component 3 is worth 30% of your National Board score. And then the 4th component is called effective and reflective practitioner. And so for this one, you want to show how you have identified needs that you personally have as a professional, and also needs that your students have, and how you've undergone professional development and collaboration to to meet those students and your own professional needs. So you're showing how you collaborate with others and develop yourself as a professional. And that one is worth 15% of your score. Okay, so that's a little bit of just an overview of the 4 components. Each component is a lot of work. On mine, I probably spent 40 or 50 hours each on the components, and I did mine over 2 years. So that's a question candidates have, like, what order should I do them in, or should I do them all in 1 year? You can do it all in 1 year, but it's a lot. A lot of people do spread it over 2 or 3 years. You have 3 years to attempt each component, and then you have up to 5 years to complete the whole portfolio if you need to redo any of the components. Okay, so that was, I know, a lot of information that I kind of just talked for 10 minutes. I'm just going to pause right now and ask if you have questions about what I've discussed so far. And then I will go into more detail about specifics of tips and how to approach each of these components. So if you have specific questions, maybe hold those, but I'll pause here. And you can turn on the mic or ask in the chat. Yes, Sarah.
So are these isolated components where we're not needing to film component 3, like the 2 students that we chose for component 2?
Correct. Yes, correct. In fact, I think there's wording in the National Board where they specifically want you to show different students. So the class that you use in component 3, you need to pick a different class and different students in component 2. And then there's places where they want samples of student work in the different components, and they want it to be different students. So it works well. I mean, they are, in a way, they are standalone components, but they're giving an overall view of your teaching practice in these different areas.
Thank you.
And Ileana?
Yes, so I teach elementary school, but I like the way that you say that if I have, because sometimes I have just 5th graders.
Yes.
And my class is an elective. And so if I had just 5th graders, so I will be able to do it.
So 50% of the students in your featured class have to be 11 years old. So most 5th graders are 10 or 11. So you are going to have to wait till later in the year or choose your classes in such a way that you've got enough 11-year-olds to meet the requirement.
Yeah, because that is something that I can just work with the magnet coordinator. My classroom is an elective class.
Yes.
So sometimes they can put students.
Yeah. If you can get, one group that's mostly, and it has to be 50%. So if you've got 20 kids, if you've got at least 10 of them that are 11 years old.
That's what's my other question. Yeah. Like, I don't have a lot of students. So
that's okay.
Are small.
Yeah, that's okay. It can be small. It has to be it depends on like different portfolio components, but some of the components require you to reuse an entire rostered class. So it can't be a club or a group of kids that you combine yourself. It has to be like a class that's on your roster in Infinite Campus. And so that rostered class needs to be 50% 11 years old.
All right. Yeah. So because usually my groups are between 8 to 12.
Yeah,
I don't have more
fine.
than that.
That's totally fine because that's your teaching situation. So that's no problem.
Okay.
But yeah, please do just check if you're in that situation. Like most high school teachers have no problem, but in your situation, just check the requirements carefully for the ages of the students. You're going to have to be intentional.
Yeah, I was checking that last year, and that's what I noticed. They say 11 years, but I wasn't sure if I can have just total of 50. Now, my classes are also semester long. So
that's also
sometimes I have one semester and then I have different students the next semester.
No problem. No problem. And so maybe for example, your component 3 class you do in December of first semester, and then your component 4 class is in February of your second semester. That's fine. It doesn't have to be the same group of kids.
Okay.
National Board does have requirements about when the classes are versus when you submit. So you can't submit a portfolio based on a class from 3 years ago, for example. There is a time limit. So just go in and check those requirements carefully, and you're going to have to be really attentive to make sure you're in compliance, but I think it's possible.
All right. And now the test that you were talking about, the passing the test, the ACTFL.
Yes.
Oral and writing, those are supposed, those are in the target language we teach, or has
Yes,
to be
those
in
are both in the target language. Yeah, the actful tests are you're testing your language proficiency in the target language. So, and I haven't given you tons of information about it because the specifics as far as how to register for the test those are all on the National Board website.
Right.
So, you can
Yeah,
check.
because I did the praxis in Spanish too.
You
Yeah,
did the praxis.
it was
So,
for, yeah.
yeah, I don't think they accept the praxis. I think it has to be this actful test, but check
Yeah.
the website to be sure.
Yeah, but
And I
that
mean,
was 4 part. It was listening, speaking, reading, and writing the praxis.
okay. Yeah, I think this is a little bit different. There's
Different,
one for specifically speaking and then one specifically for writing
Right.
proficiency.
Okay.
Okay. But I imagine, the process is similar to the praxis.
Okay.
Okay. Any last questions about kind of this overview? Oh, I see. If you have already taken the ACTFL proficiency test, you need to take it again. I have my certificate and I took it in 2019. Okay. If you have your certificate, you can submit that. And I know they will take certificates from the past, but there is a time limit. And I want to say it has to be in the last 2 years, but I'm not sure. So check on ACTFL or check on the National Board website for that requirement. Jessica, I'm not sure if they will take one from that long ago, but you can check. And it is every component, there is a fee for it. I'll actually talk about those fees in a minute. So there is a financial outlay to attempt National Board for each component. It's not completely cheap. Yeah, Anne.
Yeah, so are all 4 components in the target language as well?
Okay, so you're writing your essays in English. The component 1 test is in English, but you're writing about what happens in your classroom. And so, of course, a lot of that's going to be in the target language. Sometimes teachers ask, like, does my class have to be 100% in the target language? And the answer is no. National Board doesn't require that. But what you do have to do is write reflectively about why you chose to use the target language or not at different points in the classroom. And it needs to be based on sound pedagogy. So National Board doesn't require any specific pedagogical approach, but they do require you to write about why you made the instructional decisions that you did make. And you're writing in English.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so to kind of summarize this discussion, so the ACTFL proficiency test is in your target language. Everything else, you're writing and taking your test in English. Okay. All right. And I'm going to continue on now. And if I'll stop again for questions at different points. So this is about the cost. Okay, there is some cost here. So you have to register as on the National Board website. That's $75 a year. So each year that you're in this process, $75. The 2 tests, the oral proficiency, OPI is like oral proficiency interview, and then written proficiency test. Those 2 ACTFL tests, they're just under $100 a piece. Each component, each of the 4 components that you submit is $475. So that means the minimum cost to achieve National Board certification is $2,100. That's if you do it in 1 year and you pass everything on the first attempt, which, I mean, most of us don't. So this cost is going to increase if you take more than 1 year and add $75 a year for the subscription. And many, many teachers need to retake components. I know that that's not what we want to hear. Like, we want to get it the first try. About 40% of candidates who attempt National Board achieve it on their first try. So 60% of teachers have to try again or have to redo components. 75%, I think, of teachers eventually do achieve certification, and that leaves about 25% of teachers who attempt it and don't achieve it. So it is not a guarantee. It's not like, for example, a master's degree, where most teachers, if they are willing to put the time and money in and do the work, they'll get their master's degree. It's the skills that it requires are the same skills that led you to get your undergraduate degree. This is different. It's not as guaranteed. And so that is something that you have to consider and weigh as you're looking at National Board certification. Time requirements. So you have 3 years to make your first attempt on all the components. If you pass each component, then great, you're done. If you need to redo components, you can redo each of the components up to twice and you have 5 years to complete the entire process. So there is once you submit your first portfolio entry, the clock is ticking a little bit, and you do have to be intentional about making sure you meet those timing requirements. So candidates ask me, can I do all the components in 1 year? You are allowed to, but I do ask candidates, do you value your sanity? Of course, you're teaching full-time as you do this. A lot of us have, family obligations and other obligations, and this is a big time commitment. I spent, like I said, about 40 hours each on each of the components. So the way I did it, and a pathway that you can consider, is I did 2 components in my first year, and I did 2 components in my second year. I did my proficiency test in the summer in between them, because when I was going through, they added the proficiency test requirement after I'd already started, which was annoying. But now it's there, and I hope that nothing like that will happen to you. So this is a sequence I suggest to candidates, but this is just my suggestion. Take it or leave it. I do suggest that candidates do the 2 actful tests, the OPI and the WPT, the target language proficiency test, before you start the rest of the process, and maybe in the summer before you start. And then I suggest the first year that you do it, you do the component 1 test, which you can do in the spring. And you also do component 2. The reason I like that sequence is because I think component 2 is the easiest written component. So it's a good one to get your feet wet. And it's you do have to collect data on your students, and you do have to write. But to me, it's not as comprehensive as 3 and 4. And then the test is in the spring. It's a 1-day test. Yes, you'll study for it, but it's one and done. You can even do it after school gets out. You can do it on a Saturday. And it's a big portion of your score. It's 40%. So if you can come off of that component 1 test with a good score, it really gives you a good foundation moving forward. And then 3 and 4 are, to me, more challenging. And so my suggestion is to do them in the second year. Then if you need to redo components, do that in year 3. So that's my personal recommendation. Take it for what it's worth. So this is a possible timeline when you're working on the components. So these components, like components 2, 3, and 4, the written components, they're big, and the instructions for them are 30 pages long of single space. It's a lot to absorb. And so my recommendation to candidates is to start in the summer and print out, I like to print them out, print out the portfolio instructions and go through them with a highlighter and really read and absorb them. Really take time to read them and reread them and highlight things and make notes. And as you're doing this, think about what you could do to meet the requirements. A mistake candidates make is they say, oh, I have to differentiate. Well, I have a really great way to differentiate using music and using art. And so I'm going to do that. And they don't really read the instructions. They start with the lesson that is good. And it is probably a great lesson, but you can't start with the lesson and try to shoehorn that lesson into National Board requirements. You need to start with the requirements, because there's a lot that they're asking you to show. And if you just immediately think oh, this lesson is great, it's going to work, it most likely is not going to hit all the requirements. You need to start with the requirements and work backwards and think about, how can I demonstrate? How do I demonstrate these in my classroom? And how can I beef up my instruction to demonstrate everything they're asking for? Another mistake candidates make is this is the point when you've kind of sketched a plan, what I want, how I think I can meet these requirements, how I think I can demonstrate this, and you've got an idea of what units you might work in. That is the time then to seek feedback from a mentor or from a colleague who's gone through the National Board process before you actually start teaching the units and before you start collecting evidence. I cannot tell you how many times I've had candidates come to me in February. The portfolios are due in the spring. They come to me in February or March, and they're like, hey, will you proofread my portfolio and give me feedback? And I start reading it, and it's this portfolio has a fundamental flaw. They've missed something. They aren't really demonstrating what it's looking for. And it's kind of too, I don't want to go to a candidate that has their portfolio more or less done and tell them, I think you need to start over. I would rather work with that candidate in September as they're planning their unit and say, hey, did you think about how you're going to show this or that element? How can we tweak this so it really does meet the National Board requirements? So seek feedback about your plan once you've kind of got your ideas before you start collecting evidence, before you start writing, and before it's the point of no return. So then in the fall, you do have to collect release forms from parents, like permission forms. National Board has a form on its website, and you have to have it for any student that has any input at all into your portfolio. So collect those release forms. And I recommend in the fall that you teach your unit and collect the evidence you need. You're going to collect student samples. You're going to collect videos. You might be collecting other, assessment data, other evidence that you need to show the portfolio. So that's my recommendation, is do that in the fall. Then in the winter, you have to register and commit, like pay and commit to doing a portfolio in, it's late February, the deadline. So look on their website, but around the end of February or middle to end of February, that's when you have to say, I'm submitting component 2 this year. I'm paying for it. I'm committed. And I'll also my recommendation is over winter break and in January, February timeline, start writing and drafting your entries, get feedback, and get proofreading. Then the portfolio submission window is in April through mid-May. Those dates, you'll check on the website for the exact dates where you submit all of your data. And then once you've submitted it in May, then you close the National Board website. You try not to think about it again until December when the scores come out. It's a long wait to find your scores. Of course, if you're submitting new portfolios, this process will begin again with your second set of portfolios for the second year. So that's the timeline that's my suggestion and recommendation. That is not recommended by National Board, but this is what I've seen work well for a lot of candidates. Anne asked, are there study resources for the first component? So National Board gives you a little bit. And actually, I think that's my next slide. Hang on a second, and I will answer that question because I have a slide for each of the 4 components. If you are not a native English speaker, there is an extra time accommodation for component 1 for the test. You have to request it. I don't remember the dates, but you have to request it a few weeks before your test. So check that on the website. Take the extra time accommodation. You're doing kind of deep multiple choice questions in your second language. So that's what the accommodation is there for. And I have a link in the slides. My slides are linked at the top of the chat. And then there's a link there in the slides that takes you to the page that tells you how to get the extra time accommodation. Oh, and I helpfully wrote there, it takes 8 weeks for the accommodation to be approved. So you need to give yourself plenty of time to get that accommodation, but you should definitely do it if English is your second language. Okay, so Anne, this is going to get to your question about component 1. Component 1 is a standardized test. Part 1 is a 45 multiple choice questions, and you have 60 minutes to do them. Part 2 is 3 essays, and you have 30 minutes each. So the timing is tight. And one of my bits of advice to candidates is practice, especially those essays, those are a little easier to practice for. Practice with the clock, because that 30 minutes goes by so fast and you have to show quite a few things. So resources to study for the test. There's not a lot of candidates, and I felt the same when I did mine. I wanted more. National Board doesn't give a lot. National Board does have standards, and they tell you that standards 2 and 4, I believe, I think those are the right ones. 2 and 4 are covered on the test. And you can go and look in what are standards 2 and 4. And it's things like your knowledge of the phonology system, your knowledge of cultural values in the country, your knowledge of different dialects in your target language. So there are things like that, but they don't tell you what that means, at least not in as much depth as a lot of candidates would like. So my friend Erin Erin is also a National Board certified teacher. She's a French teacher in Colorado. She has a really beautiful YouTube channel with tips for studying for each of the 4 components. I've linked it there, and I've also got some resources on my website. The book that Erin and I have coming out, it's being published in February. There's a link there, and there is a discount code. I'm not trying to sell my stuff, but I do believe it's a helpful resource. And we worked really hard to delineate those items in the National Board standards. What do they mean? What does it mean? Phonological systems. What are discourse features? And we bulleted out what we believe those mean. And we did pilot this with folks who took the component 1 test last summer. And got feedback from them before we went to publication, and people did feel like that was helpful. So I think it's the best resource that's available for National Board. It's the only resource that's available specifically for world language teachers. And of course, everything on the websites and Erin's YouTube channel are all free. So Jolie asked, if we get scores in December and pass, is Wake County applying the supplement for the remainder of the year? Actually, they backdate it to August or to the beginning of your school year. So that 12, so in, I think it comes through your paycheck, like your February paycheck, but February of the year you certify, you get the biggest paycheck of your life because you get your pay plus 12% backdated for 5 or 6 months. So yeah, it is truly awesome. I used my supplement when I got it. I redid my kitchen with marble and I love it. And every time I look at it, it's like a piece of art and it's my like reward for all my work of National Board. So that is very nice. Oh, and by the way, the supplement is from the state. It's not from Wake County, just FYI. Okay, so that's a little bit about I'm not going to play the video. The video is they're like 45 minutes long. They're quite long and they have a lot of helpful information. Okay, maybe I should stop there and take any other questions about component 1 or about anything I've said so far.
Are there like explicit rubrics for each component submission that you can align your submission to?
Yes, that's such an excellent question. There are rubrics. They're holistic rubrics, but there are bullet points, and yes, you can align them. So when you're writing your portfolio, it tells you what it's looking for and what you need to collect, and then it gives you like a page of questions. And the questions are what you're supposed to answer in your written commentary. And then the scorers, though, the scorers don't actually look at the questions. The scorers look at the rubric, which you have access to. And one piece of advice I have, I think it's later on, one bit of advice I have is you really need to look at that rubric when you're writing as much as you look at the questions. You need to make sure that your answers to the questions are hitting all the rubric points. So yeah, excellent question. Okay, component 2, this is the differentiation component. I suggest you start with this component for written commentary because I think it's the easiest of the 3. It's worth 15%. It's not a big value, but to me, it's the most straightforward. So basically you choose one of your classes. You have to show that you know the kids really well in the class with lots of different data and pulled from different places. It can be like structured or like unstructured. I just lost the word, but like it can be, like numbers, like their test scores and their GPA. It can also be like informal data about like their likes and dislikes and just your classroom observations. And from that data, you select goals for the students. So this is actually one of the biggest mistakes I see candidates make. They give all this data about their kids and they show how well they know their kids. And then their goal for the class is, we're going to work on imperfect because it's level 2 and we always do imperfect in level 2. Well, you just broke apart the sequencing of your portfolio because you didn't show how your knowledge of students led to your goals for the students. So you need to choose goals that are customized for these kids at this moment for this group based on your knowledge of the kids and your knowledge of instruction. Now, you can do something like imperfect or I think a proficiency-based goal is better. Like we're going to talk about our childhood, but you have to show why these kids, why it's an appropriate goal for them. If you say like, this is the next page in my curriculum, or this is what my PLC is doing, that's not going to score well on the rubric. So you want to show that your goals are based on your knowledge of students. Then you give the kids a formative assessment to see where they are on the goal. And based on your analysis of that assessment, you choose 2 kids that have 2 different needs, and through the whole unit, which is like, it has to be, they give you time frame. I think it has to be between 3 and 6 weeks. In that unit, you show how you differentiate for the 2 kids based on their unique learning needs. At the end, you give them an assessment, those 2 kids, and you show how you brought them to greater heights of proficiency. And then your written commentary is your analysis of all of that. So that's a little overview of component 2. So you do spend 3 to 6 weeks collecting data as you teach the unit. And you have to keep like tons of records, conversations with the kids, all the different ways you assessed as you take them through the unit, to then write your commentary at the end. Erin has a great video about component 2, and I've got the same links there as I had before. Okay, so that is the differentiation component.
Hi, world language.
Oh, sorry about that. All right, component 3, this one is worth the most points of the written, or most percentage of the written commentary. And this is the one where you take videos. So component 3 is teaching practice and learning environment. So you're going to choose, you're actually going to do this with 2 classes, but I'll just take like your first class. Again, you get to know the students really well with lots of data, and you identify goals for the class. Then you plan a lesson and you videotape it. And then your analysis, your written commentary. So you do submit the video clips, 10-minute video clips. And your analysis is based on what was my planning for this lesson and why. And then during the lesson, what actually happened, what decisions did I make during the lesson and why? So so Susie asked me this question and I told her, that's a great question. I'm not going to answer that right now because I know that Susie, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but then when Bobby asked me the same question, I answered him because blah, blah, blah. That's the sort of thing they're looking for. Or this happened in the lesson. A student asked me this question and I realized that the whole class had a misconception. So I stopped the class and I gave instruction, and here's why I felt the need or I chose to stop the class at that moment and give a full group instruction. Here's why I did each thing I did during the lesson and how it aligned with, like, this was my plan, here were my goals, and here's what I actually did and why. So that's what your written commentary is based on. And you complete that process for 2 different class sessions with 2 different lesson formats. So it is nice if you can show different levels, but even if you can't, you want to show different types of instruction. Again, small group, partner work, gallery walk, direct teaching, like different lesson formats, so that they get a little bit of a snapshot of your instruction. Okay, video links for more information about component 3. Component 4, I think this is the hardest component because there's a lot that goes into it. It's only worth 15% of your portfolio, but it actually requires a lot of supporting documentation and it asks you to show a lot. So there's kind of 2 parts to this component. The first part is showing that you use data to drive your instruction. So you choose like all of them, you choose a goal based on data about student. So you give a formative assessment, you deliver the instruction, you give a summative assessment, and you have to show how the data at each point drove your next step in your decision making. So this is really different than what we do most of the time. And I think this is why, one reason I think candidates sometimes don't achieve national, even great teachers don't achieve it, is because they're not writing about their decision making properly. They'll say like, I collected all this data, and then I did this in class, and here were my assessment results, but they don't say why. How did that formative assessment data, what about it made you caused you to make the instructional decisions that you made during the unit? And you need to show that everything you do in the unit is intentional. I gave the kids this activity. I chose this resource because of my data about students. So you really want to show that data-driven instruction and how it leads to good student outcomes. Another part of component 4 within this is you have to show how you foster student self-evaluation. And that is not something that students do naturally or well. So you really do have to work with students to get them to give thoughtful evaluations about their own progress in the language and set goals for themselves. And component 4 is looking for you to show that you're developing that like data-driven process for yourself and that you're fostering it in your students. So it's a big lift, and that is just part 1 of component 4. Part 2 of component 4 is about learning needs. So you need to identify a need that you personally have as a professional, and you also need to identify a need that your students have. These 2 needs can be related or unrelated, but they have to require advocacy, collaboration, or leadership on your part. So that's National Board's words. So you pick something that requires advocacy, collaboration, or leadership on your part. And so you go through a process to meet the two needs. It might be professional development for yourself, or it might be bringing in outside professionals in some way, or collaborating with people in the community or in the school. But you meet both of the needs, and then you show how your efforts to improve to meet your own need and to meet your students' need, how it resulted in improved student learning. So again, that's kind of a big lift. It's kind of a lot of pieces. And I think that a lot of candidates do struggle with component 4 because there's just a lot to it. So the other ones are a little more straightforward, but it is achievable. I mean, component 4, it was the last one I did, and I actually scored the highest on it. So you can do well on it, but you just have to be really attentive to the instructions and make sure that you're hitting all the things they're asking for, and they're asking for a lot. It really takes it's a big like mental lift to achieve everything that they're asking you to show. Okay, link to Erin's video, and the other links are all here within the presentation. Okay, I have a few tips that I think help candidates succeed. So I'd like to just go ahead and share those tips right now, and then I'll pause, and then at the end I'll just stay on as long as folks need to ask questions. So planning is really important in your national board. Number one, you almost have to have these instructions memorized. They are dense, and they're asking you to do a lot. And a lot of times when candidates don't pass the portfolio, it's because they really didn't actually do what the national board asked, even if it was a great lesson. So an example, the component 3, the videoed lesson, they ask you to show students interacting with each other and with you in the target language. Okay, they have to interact with each other and interact with you in the target language. So you might have a great lesson. Maybe you like bring in a restaurateur from Peru, and he shows the kids how to make some food, and they all love it, and they give you rave reviews on the class. But if the kids aren't interacting with each other and with you in the target language, it doesn't matter how great the lesson was, it won't score well because it's not hitting those rubric points. So you can't start with a great lesson and try to make it fit. You have to start with what National Board is asking and plan backwards into what your lesson is going to do. So really become familiar with those instructions. Make sure your lesson is designed to meet the requirements, or your unit is designed to meet the requirements. Please ask for feedback before you get rolling. If you come to me, I would be happy to like help you, or especially at the beginning to like bounce ideas with you. But if you come to me in February with a completed portfolio, a lot of times there's not much I can do to help you if there's a flaw in your portfolio. I would rather help you in August when there's still time to make adjustments. Give yourself plenty of time. I have had candidates, I've worked with candidates who are like, oh, I'm going to videotape tomorrow, and then I'm going to write, I'm going to write my lesson, my portfolio this weekend, and I'm going to submit it. And it's like, okay, I mean, you're a superstar if you can do that. There's so much you have to include. Give yourself the gift of time. If you try your lesson in October and it flops or it doesn't work, you still have time to try something else, and then collect more data than you need. So if you don't shoehorn yourself in where it's like, I've got to get this lesson videotaped, or I've got to use these 2 students, because if you pick 2 kids for your unit, and then one of them like gets sick and doesn't finish the semester or moves or whatever, and that was one of your kids, you're back to the drawing board. So collect data on 4 students or 6 students. Find pairs of students who have similar needs for the differentiation one, and differentiate for all of them. And then at the end, pick the 2 that really highlight most what you want students to, like what you want to show. Same with the video. Videotape a lot of lessons, and then you have a choice. And sometimes when you're watching those videos, you're surprised by what you see. That you see things you didn't realize were going to be there, either good or bad. I'm always surprised when I watch my videos, and I often don't end up I haven't ended up using the video I thought I was going to use while I was filming because of what I saw. So to collect a lot more data than you need, film a lot, collect a lot of data from students, and then you have choices. This goes back to, I think it was Matt's question. Somebody asked a question about rubrics. The rubric, this is my suggestion for whatever it's worth. Take the rubric points and use those as sentence starters. So if the rubric says, I prioritize the data I collected about students. It says like you demonstrated how you prioritize the data. So use that as your sentence starter. I prioritize the data I collected about students by blah, blah, blah. The rubric, like I said, it's a holistic rubric, and a lot of times there's multiple clauses in it. There's multiple clauses in the questions, and it's easy to answer one clause and then underdevelop the other clause. You have to hit all of it to score well. So here are some pitfalls I see candidates making. I've alluded to a few of these already, but this is a big one. Your goals cannot just be what you teach every year to every class, or because your PLC does it, or because your curriculum, because it's your textbook or whatever. It has to be driven by data about these students. These students need X. So here's my goal for them. Now, of course, that can fit into the framework of your PLC or what you do every year. Like there's arguments to be made that like these students don't yet know how to talk about past events. So that's my goal for them. But just show how your understanding of students and your understanding of the language let you choose this goal at this moment. Also, it's really easy. The questions, it's like a page of questions, and each one has like 5 or 6 components to it. So make sure you're answering every part. An example, I think I alluded to this earlier, but there's a question in there that says, what were the sources of data that you collected about your students, and how did you prioritize them? And so a lot of candidates, they'll list a page and a half of data sources. I got their standardized test scores. I talked to the previous teachers. I sent a parent survey home, and all of that is great. But then they don't answer the second part. How did you prioritize the data you collected? Well, that second question is actually the analysis piece. The first one, what data did you collect? That's just description. And if all you do is describe your data, but you don't analyze how you used it, how you prioritized it, you're not going to score well on the rubric. So really be diligent. I mean, like go through and underline the verb so you know that you're hitting every part of every question and you don't leave points on the table. It's not really points, but you don't leave requirements on the table. Make sure that you meet the rubric requirements, and you're going to want to, like, at some point after you've drafted, you're going to want to go through and align with the rubric and make sure you really did hit everything. Analyze. They want analysis of your teaching practice and why you made the decisions you did. So if you take your video and you just like give a narrative of what happened in class, like the kids walked in and I gave them this worksheet, and then this kid asked me this question, and then I answered this, and you're just describing stuff that's visible in your video, you're not analyzing it. What you need to say is, when the kids walked in, I asked that I gave them this worksheet because blah, blah, blah. I knew from the past class they needed it. It was a good worksheet because. And then when a student asked me a question, here's how I answered it because. So most of your writing needs to be analysis. Don't get bogged down in like, this student asked me this and I answered that. I've seen candidates write like a page where they just like transcribe basically a conversation with a student, but they don't say why. And the assessors, they're going to watch your video. They can see what happened in the video. So you need to like reference it quickly. When the girl in the green shirt asked me this question, I answered her this way because I know this about her and I know this about where she is in her proficiency, and I wanted to move her this direction. So here's why I answered her the way I did. So make sure you have lots of analysis and you explain why you do everything. Why your portfolio needs to be full of, I did this because, I realized this because, when I saw this, it showed me because, and lots of analysis. Okay. I'll go to the resources in a second. I'm going to pause there because that is kind of the bulk of my presentation. Do they offer accommodations for candidates with disabilities? So I know there's an accommodation for candidates with second language, who speak English as a second language. I don't know the answer to your question for sure, but check the National Board website. My guess is there might be like an extra time accommodation, but I can't answer that for sure. So please check the website. Sorry that I don't have more information about that. What other questions do you have right now? All right. Either I answered everything really well or everyone's asleep. Hopefully this has been helpful. Yes, I'm sorry, Eason. I'm not sure how to pronounce.
Yes. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
You said the national board is for Spanish and French
Yes, ma'am.
language. Now, how about Chinese?
Unfortunately, they don't have Chinese yet. My co-author Erin and we are advocating with National Board to try to get them to add other languages. And I know that actually ACTFL, I actually spoke with the incoming president of ACTFL to ask her if this could be something ACTFL would take on. And so it's on, she said it's on their radar. So unfortunately, not yet. Nora, I know that you've encouraged teachers of other languages to do an ESL certification. And
Yes.
I don't know very much about that. Do you want to say anything about that, Nora?
Yeah, many Chinese teachers have done that. I mean, and that's the only way right now, unfortunately, to get that. And the county kind of helps when you have to do the recording. So you're going to be like going to an ESL classroom and do that stuff because that's the only way right now.
But I thought for ESL to be an ESL teacher, the teacher had to English had to be their first language.
No,
No, it doesn't have to. Okay,
no.
because I got told that the English have to be a first language to be able to be ESL teacher.
And one thing that I was thinking, Ishin, is
Yeah.
to ask Mr. Chen from NLO. He has a national board on ESL.
Okay.
To kind of describe his process to you guys
Hmm.
during your PLC. So yeah, I think he renewed last year.
Okay.
Have you mentioned that, Lisa, the renewal? Because that's
No, I didn't. You do have to renew it every 5 years. The renewal is less difficult than the initial certification. Something like 98% of teachers renew, and it's like doing one portfolio component. You do have to pay for it. So this is something you have to, keep up. I probably need to add that slide. That's actually something when people ask me, should I do this or should I do a master's degree? It's like, you have to consider the cost. Like this is cheaper, but it's not guaranteed and you have to keep renewing it. Whereas a master's degree, it's one time, it's more expensive. It's also, I suppose, not guaranteed, but I think most people are able to do it. So, okay, I have a few resources to share with you. These are all linked in the website or in the slideshow. So there are a lot of Facebook groups about National Board Certification. I've listed them here. There's one specifically for world language teachers. My friend Erin, my co-author Erin, is really active on that site. And it's really helpful if you just want to ask like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about for my portfolio, can I get some feedback? Or if you have specific questions. And then there are some here that are more general for national boards. So join a Facebook group. That's really helpful. Here are some links. Most of these are links to National Board's website and to their specific documentation, but their overall website, that architecture of accomplished teaching that I showed you, you'll want to study that in depth. Resources for each component and so on. These are all listed here. At the bottom is the National Board Standards for World Language, which you're going to want to look at, especially when you're getting ready for the Component 1 test. So lots of small print there with, I hope, helpful links. There's a really nice podcast called National Board Conversations. And then there's a picture of my book. I'm very proud of it. Nora, thank you for letting me share about my co-author and my book that's coming. It's the publication date is February 18th. You can purchase it here, and there's a 20% discount code that I have linked there also. And it's a workbook. So one of the things that we did was we aligned all of the prompts in National Board with the relevant rubric points, and we made it in like a checklist. So you can kind of you can like physically write it in. And there's also a link with the purchase to an electronic document where if you want like I don't know if it's a Google or Word document, but where you can type. So you can kind of draft your ideas And then later you can come back and make sure that they're really aligned with the rubric points. So that's helpful. We're not allowed to give examples. National Board makes us, when you submit your portfolio, you have to sign that you will not share it with anyone. You will not give it as an example. You will not provide examples. But we did put non-examples in the book of teachers who maybe we think wouldn't certify with, fictional teachers who wouldn't certify with something that they tried or who made mistakes. So that is coming out in February, in time for the test. If you want to do it's a little late, I think, to do components 2, 3, and 4 this year. But if you're interested in starting the process, I would recommend you could try component 1, the test, in the spring. And do the proficiency test also, and then start your portfolio components next fall would be my recommendation. And this will certainly come out in time for that. So that is all I have for you today as just the overview. And I will stay on the call as long as you like for questions. Donna asked which components are required for renewal. Renewal is every 5 years, and it has a different process. It's called maintenance of certification. And for maintenance of certification, you have to submit 1 portfolio entry. You have to show 2 different professional development activities you've done since your initial certification. And you have to videotape 1 classroom, 1 class, and write about it. I think it's about 15 pages that you have to write along with a video. So it's kind of equivalent to 1 portfolio entry. And it's approximately $500 to submit it. Okay. And Sarah, you had a question.
Hey, Lisa, thank you so much. This has been
course.
really helpful.
Great.
So when talking about the timeline, do you suggest you're collecting data and taking your videos and things like that, doing your lessons in the fall, and then in the spring, you're more so writing about it?
That is my suggestion. I actually have kind of a suggested timeline. Let me go back.
Oh, sorry.
Here it is. Yeah, no worries. It's in this. It's a lot of information to absorb, and it's in the slideshow. But yeah, that is my suggestion. I suggest if you're going to do components 2, 3, and 4, you start in the summer, when hopefully your brain is a little less absorbed in school, at least if you're a traditional calendar teacher. Print out those instructions. Your first step, I believe, is print the instructions and read them and highlight them and read them again, and just let it sit, let it marinate. Think about how you might meet all the things it's asking you to cover in your class, and then kind of sketch out what your unit might look like, what sorts of data you might collect, what sorts of evidence you might show, and then get some feedback kind of as you're ramping into the school year. Then teach your units and collect your data in the fall. And then in the spring or winter and early spring, that's when you're going to be writing and proofreading, getting a second round of feedback. The portfolio entries are due. There's a window in April through mid-May that you can submit. So that's my suggested timeline.
Thank you. Sorry. I know you talked about that. Thanks for explaining it again.
No worries. And it is a lot to absorb. You need to give yourself time to read and reread and ask questions. And it's when a candidate asks me questions, I will never say, well, that is on page 46 of the instructions, so go back and read. It's no, it is really a lot to absorb. And it helps to just take time and look at it again and sit with it and talk to people. Give yourself that time. Other questions?
We can see the slides.
Yes, I'll drop the link in the chat again. I think it's pinned at the top, but here it is. That's the link to my slides. And then, of course, all the links within the slides are there for your use.
I think Anne has a question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So my question is, if you happen to be in a PLC where other people are also pursuing national board certification.
Lucky you.
Well, if that were the case, can you co-plan? Or what are the guidelines around that?
Okay. Your portfolio has to be yours and yours alone. But can you bounce ideas off of people? Can you, I mean, like, yes, if you're planning with your PLC, yes, that's totally allowable, but you have to demonstrate that you are meeting the national board requirements in your classroom with your planning. So it's totally fine to collaborate. It's totally fine to share materials. You don't have to, your materials don't have to be unique. Like in some of the components, it asks you to like show examples of like assessments that you used and why did you choose those assessments, or lesson materials, why did you use them? So you do not have to create your own assessment. Like you can use a canned one or you can use your PLC one, but you have to show that you used it, that it was appropriate for these kids and for the thing you want to measure and why you chose it. So you have to tell why.
Okay, but you could like do some of that planning with units.
Yes, so I would be nervous if like I and my colleague are both submitting kind of the same portfolio topic. Does that make sense? Like we're going to teach
Yeah.
the same lesson and we're both going to kind of film the same day and it's going to go in kind of similar. That would make me nervous. I don't know that it's expressly like prohibited, but I would just try to like, you're doing level
Yeah.
3, I'm doing level 2, you know, so that you're not, or
Yeah,
you're
that
doing
makes
the
sense.
like clothing unit and I'm going to do the food unit. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it
It
does.
would
It
make,
just kind of impacts the PLC, you know,
yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
if
no,
you're-
that's an interesting question. So if you're in a situation where you're in a PLC and you have common assessments, for example, it's okay. Like you can still do that. You just have to like, I wouldn't actually mention that in my portfolio. I wouldn't say like, I'm using this assessment because I'm required to, because it's my PLC's common assessment. I wouldn't write that. Instead, I would write something like, this assessment is appropriate for these students because I know these kids, blah, 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 and here's what they need, and here's the data I'm trying to collect about them. So this is why I selected it. And I collaborated with a classmate, with a colleague who has a really good resource about blah, blah, blah. And I tried that in my class because I thought it would meet my students' needs.
Okay.
So part of it's a little bit in how you frame it. I would stay away from language that suggests that you're required to teach something or that you're teaching it because everyone's doing it or you always do it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I would, again, the question about like, what if, you know, my colleague and I are both teaching the clothing unit, can we both submit? I don't think it's prohibited, but it would make me nervous.
Okay.
I would try to like find different things to show.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you.
Okay. And by the way, we are at 5 o'clock. I will again stay on as long as people have questions, but if you don't have further questions, then I'm really thankful that you spent your time with me today. I hope this was helpful and that you have some resources and food for thought moving forward. And please reach out to me if you have questions. I won't like coach candidates, but I will answer questions and I'll point you in directions if I can be helpful. And like I said, I'll stay on, and I see lots of messages of thanks in the chat. I'm really happy to offer this professional development, and please reach out if you have questions or I can help you. And I'll just stay on the call as people until people log off.
Thank you, everybody. Go and get some bread and milk. I'm checking the sky, and it's
what's going to happen? Are we going to have school tomorrow?
It's going to be at 7:30. They're going to make the decision on the call.
Okay.
But I'm seeing the sky right now from my building and it looks snowy. I don't know.
Okay.
But if it happens, it's not gonna be a remote day yet.
Yeah.
So we're gonna use like a bank day.
Yeah.
Meaning like teachers will have to do some, I don't know, like professional learning or do something.
You can print out the national board portfolio information and read through it. That would be a great professional development for tomorrow.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean,
I do have one question regarding ACTFL, WPT, and the another test.
Yes.
Can you suggest any material for that?
I can't, but they're on the ACTFul website, they have quite a bit of study guides and suggested resources for it. So yeah, I don't have a lot of information about that. I will say if you're a native speaker, then you're probably fine. You might, if you need to brush up on writing a little bit. If you're not a native speaker, then you might need to have some conversation practice, make sure that you're comfortable speaking. Like I speak middle school French, so all day, if you ask me to talk about the members of my family, my skill schedule, or like foods I like and dislike, I'm golden. And after that, I'm like, oh my gosh, my vocabulary is so bad. But so, you might need to brush up in that case.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and as far as the format of the test and like what it looks like, they've actually got, I think, some practice questions and some samples on ACTFul's website. So go take a look at what they have available.
Okay.
I had a couple questions.
Of course.
So, and a little bit of this is hearsay from my aunt and mom are both had their national boards. So my aunt suggested that for component, I guess it must be for component 4, that I do something at the community level, like a tutoring program or like design and deliver professional development. Is that something that you would recommend doing like before starting this process or during the process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So component 4 is kind of a behemoth. Go read the requirements for it. They want you, they're referring to the second part of it where you have to choose a professional need that you have. And so you need to identify something where you want to grow as a professional because it's going to impact and assist your students. And then you find a way to meet that need. And so that's where it's like something at the community level or providing some participating in professional development. And then you need to show that it impacted students. So then if you take it and you give a professional development and you get feedback from the participants, that's showing indirectly that it impacted students. Or if you get like testimonials from people that you worked with, and then you have to also choose a student need and show how that improves student learning. So that would be like the community tutoring or, setting up a community like outreach of some sort, or like an outreach to parents. If you can show that it improved student attendance and then your test scores went up or the kids' attendance scores, their GPAs went up, you're looking for something where you can show that like in your collaboration with people outside, you improve student learning.
Gotcha.
So when should that happen in the process? I can't answer that for sure because they have requirements about when the activities can take place. Again, you can't write about something you did like 5 years ago. They have like time limits, but I don't have those in my head. So go look at their requirements and it says in there like when it should happen. And if you're thinking about starting component 4, like next school year, I think you're probably in the window where doing some of it now is going to be fine, but confirm that with the National Board instructions.
I liked your timeline on like maybe next year do 1 and 2, and then the following year do 3 and 4.
Yeah.
So if I started to lay that groundwork like this summer, that would probably be fine.
Check with their requirements to make sure. I don't want to say yes and not be right, but I think you're inside the window where you'd be okay. But go look at what their like limitations are.
And then that probably is answered. Just a quick, do component 2 and component 3 need to be in any way related, or are all of them completely self-contained?
They're all completely they're all completely standalone. And in fact, I think you have to show that like the class that you use for component 2 needs to be different than the class you use for component 3. I might have the details of that wrong, but they have specifications in there. You can't just do it all with like one group of kids. You have to show like the breadth of they want you to show the breadth of your teaching.
Do you know, is the cost to resubmit the full $475?
It is. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for seeking out a mentor? I remember my mom having a mentor that was Dr. somebody at UNCW.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for like folks that we could reach out to, or
So Wake County, Nora, do you know if Wake County still has like mentoring programs for National Board?
I don't think they do. I mean, like you can consult and they will help you
Mhm.
and they will give you some contact information about people, but not like a mentoring program.
Yeah. So, Michael, my advice would be to look for somebody like in your building or in, or a teacher that you know that has been through the process that would be willing to take you on, willing to work through it with you. When I went through National Board, I didn't have like a mentor per se, but I did work on it with the librarian at my school, which I know is crazy because, it's library and French, like they aren't the same, but the sort of writing we had to do, the type of analysis we had to do was the same. And like we did some collaborative projects and she read through mine and she was like, oh, you're missing this, or you need to add this. Like we did that for each other. And that was very, very helpful. So just a colleague you work well with who's like really reflective about their own practice and can look at yours and see things that you're not seeing, like that's what you need in a mentor. And it helps if they are familiar with the National Board process. What you don't want is someone who reads it and they're like, oh, it's good. Or someone who like just corrects your grammar. Like that's not helpful. You need somebody who's really going to look at it critically based on the rubrics. So I hope that helps. And I don't know, I mean, there's enough interest. Like, I don't know how many people were on the call, but I think there's at least a possibility that we could get some groups. Yeah, we might be able to get a group together of language teachers, which I think would be really helpful.
Yeah. There was a couple of people who did it last year from, I think it was Willow Spring. They were working together. So I guess they are working on year number 2 right now. They started.
And I mean, I will, if it's little things, I'll be happy to answer questions. I just don't have time to like take on more than that. But there's a lot of National Board teachers around. Find someone in your building that you work well with, who's reflective.
And it's not a requirement to have a mentor, right?
No, it's not.
No,
it's not.
I just think it would be helpful.
Yeah,
but thank you so much. That does answer a lot of my questions. I really appreciate the presentation and your help. You're very welcome. Best wishes on the process.
Come on, you're starting your career, Michael. That's so awesome. You are.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. So that's great. It's the right time.
Yeah.
And then you do a master's.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any other last questions? All right. Well, thanks to everyone who stayed for an hour plus on this. Well, it's not snowy yet.
No. It's just, I don't know. I call it the clouds are weird. So that's why I'm thinking maybe something going on. I don't know.
We'll
we
see.
have 2 more hours to see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. And if we're off school tomorrow, print out the requirements and
and have fun. Enjoy at home. Okay, I'll be contacting you on Monday with the paperwork, Lisa.
No worries. Okay. All right.
Okay,
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.